glad to see all of you here and such an interest in today's WiP session. I'm happy to present Bennett Clifford, who is currently CRRC-Georgia's International Fellow. And Bennett, if you could briefly introduce yourself, and then he'll have a presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll be able to have a short discussion session as well. And thank you once again for being here.
And also, thank you all for coming. You'll have to excuse me if I'm a little, can you all hear me? If I'm a little rough today, I'm an American, of course, and it's been an interesting day. A little bit about myself. I'm currently an international fellow at CRRC. Before, I held positions at the Program on Extremism at George Washington University Center for Cyber and Homeland Security, as well as the Georgian Foundation for Strategic and International Studies. I've also worked before as a consultant for a variety of governmental and non-governmental organizations on terrorism and foreign fighter movement specifically. So to start, I'd like to just provide a general overview about foreign fighter recruitment and how it affects Georgia specifically. My estimate is that around 50 to 200 foreign fighters from Georgia participated in the Syrian and Iraqi civil conflicts since 2012. How do I get this estimate? The 50 number is actually the official estimate that comes from the state security services. However, it should be taken into account that this is a snapshot. It was a one-time statement made by the security services about the number of Georgian citizens who are currently, at that time, in 2015, participating in the civil conflict. It does not assess in total how many from 2012 onward participated in the conflict. The 200 number is based off what I think would be around the highest possible estimate of foreign fighters, and it's based off a method using the total number of casualties, i.e. the number of fighters that have been killed in action in Syria and Iraq, multiplied by the average global death rate for foreign fighters in Syria and Iraq, which is around 10 to 15%. More than 25 Georgian citizens and residents from various regions in Georgia have been killed in action in Syria and Iraq. This process is not, I believe each time there's a report of the casualties, numbers are confirmed by the Ministry of Interior and State Security Services. However, in some cases they're confirmed by the individual family or regional analysts. It should be noted that foreign fighters from this region, the general region, that is Russia, Caucasus, and Central Asian countries, have been noted to be the second largest geographical contingent by region of foreign fighters in the Syrian and Iraqi conflicts. The Sufan group in 2015 estimated that 2,500 to 4,000 citizens of the countries of Russia, the Caucasus, and Central Asia were participating in the conflict. There was an interesting study that was conducted by the National Bureau of Economic Research in the United States that took the data from the Sufan group and other organizations that were counting the total number of foreign fighters and cross-listed them by various statistics. Economic production of the country, the total population of the country. And this chart is important because it calculates the number of foreign fighters based off the official estimate cross-listed by the total Muslim population of the country. As we can see from this chart, Georgia is the 29th highest country with 105.8 foreign fighters for its Muslim citizens, which are about 400,000 based off the last census in 2014. It should also be noted that this places Georgia amongst the countries, Russia, the Caucasus, and Central Asia is the second highest to only the Russian Federation. So clearly this is an issue that is a little broader than what many would expect. And also, when it's taken into account in terms of proportion, while Georgia might not be the highest capacity producer of foreign fighters, i.e. there are certainly many more countries that have more foreign fighters, especially in this region. The Central Asian countries come to mind. Georgia, when taken into account the small minority nature of its Muslim population, has one of the highest rates of foreign fighter recruitment in the world. I'd like to give a brief kind of history since 2012 of Georgian participation in the Syrian and Iraqi civil conflict. Foreign fighters from the Caucasus, including Georgian citizens and residents, some arrived very, very early in Syria. Actually, Charles Lister, an analyst of the Syrian conflict, in his newest book, which is a recommended read, said actually that some of the first foreign fighters in Syria were Chechens from the Chechen diaspora who were living in Turkey at the time. And a group of about 15 to 17 of them joined the conflict very early on, in the early stages of 2012, when foreign fighter recruitment was not nearly the same kind of global phenomena or issue that it is today. There's evidence also of Georgian citizen participation very early on in this kind of stage of the conflict where things were much more ad hoc. The image in the top left is a picture of Rustam Gelayev, who was the first Georgian to die in Syria. He died in August 2012. I should credit the journalist and analyst Joanna Parazchuk, who does excellent work on Russian-speaking foreign fighters, including those from Georgia in Syria. She's published a very extensive profile of Rustam Gelayev. Some of you may recognize, who are more familiar with the conflict in the North Caucasus, may recognize this last name. Rustam is the son, or was the son, I should say, of Ruslan, aka Hamzat Gelayev, who was a very high-up figure in the resistance in Chechnya during the 1990s, and later for Imarat Kavkaz and other Al-Qaeda-based organizations in the 2000s. But Rustam, I should say, his son, was born and lived in the CRRC-Georgia and had Georgian citizenship. As I said before, he died when Assadist forces, loyal to the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, bombed a mosque in Aleppo. And this death was, at the time, not widely distributed or disseminated, I think, besides in Georgia, but on Russian-speaking social media of foreign terrorist fighters. He gained some level of prominence, somewhat due to his father, but also due to his early participation in the conflict. Around 2013, North Caucasian militants, including Georgians, together with a group of Bosnian militants and other militants from the Balkans, as well as a few local Syrians, established a brigade called Jaish al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar, which in Arabic translates to the Army of Immigrants and Helpers. By immigrants, they were referring, of course, to the foreign fighters from various countries that were members of this group. By Ansar, which means helpers in the Arabic language, they're referring to local Syrians that assisted foreign fighters. As I said before, the group was made up of people from various different countries, not only Russia and the North Caucasus, but also the Central Asian countries, the countries of the Balkans, and also militants from the various Arab countries. It was established around August 2013 when 3 or 4 battalions merged together. And the commanders were 2 ethnic Kist from the Pankisi Valley region, Omar Shishani and Saifullah Shishani. Both of them lived in Turkey for some period before traveling onward to Syria. Jaish al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar was close to the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria, Jabhat al-Nusra. And they became famous in a raid on the Minal Air Base, which was a very turning point battle in August 2013. However, their success was short-lived, as in 2013 the group broke up. The 2 KISS leaders at the top of the battalion, Omar Shishani and Saifullah Shishani, had a personal falling out. Omar Shishani, the commander, expelled his deputy, Saifullah, and 27 other fighters from the group in August and September of 2013. There were a couple reasons. Umar was trying to shift the group more towards the Islamic State and away from Jabhat al-Nusra. Saifullah was accused of stirring up trouble with local Syrians, not getting along with local Arabs and the Ansar who were part of this group. And there were also some significant personality differences. What ended up out of the fitna, which means schism or split in Arabic, is that Saifullah stayed on as the commander of Jaish al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar and merged the brigade even further into Jabhat al-Nusra, whereas Omar Shishani and the followers in Jaish al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar that were previously loyal to him all joined the Islamic State. So this is kind of a sum up of the early history of participation. The bottom photo shows a couple of the commanders of Jaish al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar. The center, the guy with the long black beard, is Saifullah Shishani. To his left, right, I guess in this picture, is another case from the Pankisi region, Muslim Shishani. Overall, recruiting in Georgia picked up substantially after this period. Many of the people who left during the 2013-2014 period. There are confirmed cases of foreign fighter travel from multiple regions in Georgia, including the Pankisi Valley, Azeri towns and villages in Georgia, and as well from some eco-migrant Georgian Muslim communities. According to a foreign fighter in Syria, a Georgian named Tamaz Chakhalidze, also known as Ahmad Al-Georgi, who's a source you may or may not want to trust. He also says that his own battalion of Georgian-speaking foreign fighters includes Meskhetian Turks and Georgians who have converted to Islam. The methodology for the study that I'm conducting right now is a sample of the 27 Georgian residents and citizens who were killed in action in Salafi jihadist groups in Syria and Iraq. What I've done is I've coded each of the fighters by their age at the time that they were reported dead, the date that they were reported dead, their hometown in Georgia, their home region in Georgia, their ethnicity, the time, if they spent time in a third country before going from Georgia to Syria or not, whether they participated in any militant groups before joining the conflict in Syria, and whether they have any family members who are also participating in the conflicts in Syria and Iraq. All of the deaths have been verified by one of three sources, either the state security services officially, by the family of the deceased, or by trusted local sources, regional analysts. I want to make a few things clear because some of the methodology of counting foreign fighters, which I'll discuss in a bit, gets particularly difficult. It's a hard situation to manage. What this sample does not include is Georgian foreign fighters who died in other conflicts. For example, there's been evidence that Georgians have participated in the conflict in Ukraine, for example. It also doesn't include individuals who only spent a very small amount of time in Georgia, like some foreign fighters from Azerbaijan and from the North Caucasus passed through Georgia to get to Turkey and Syria. They're not counted in this database. But ultimately, even if this doesn't count a full spectrum, it's enough for, I think, a substantially sized sample of Georgian foreign fighters. Why I focused on deceased fighters and not just fighters in general. The first I talked about a little bit is kind of the quantitative certainty. So counting foreign fighters is difficult to impossible, I will say. Richard Barrett, who is one of the key authors of the Soufan Group report, says, it is only when somebody dies that his family learns that he even went to Syria, either through a telephone call from a friend designated by the dead fighter for that purpose, or through a death notice published on a group's website, Facebook page, or Twitter feed. Usually we don't know that somebody's participated in the conflict until they're dead, and there's a report on that. Estimates of foreign fighters in general, just the total number, fluctuate generally. Groups with different political interests tend to inflate or deflate the amount of fighters to their need. I talked before about the difference between longitudinal assessments, one that take into account the total number from 2012 onward, and ones that are only looking at a snapshot, like how many Georgians are currently participating in the conflict, but not taking into account the full spectrum. It's very hard to count on the ground because while Islamic State keeps a good database of its foreign fighters, other groups do not. And also there is some level of media sensationalism regarding the conflict, and sometimes in popular media especially, there can be inflated estimates. With fighters who were killed in action, we're more sure that they did participate in the conflict. It can be independently confirmed by an official or unofficial agency, and as well, because of the media focus, we can garner more details about their life and background, which for sampling purposes is necessary. But I think the more important reason why killed in action fighters are more important is because of the qualitative importance of these fighters for understanding general trends in recruitment. Shahid, the concept in Salafi jihadist groups of martyrdom, is considered the highest level of attainment for a fighter. If a fighter is killed in action, it means that they were martyred for the cause. That usually also generally means that they're used in recruitment material, focused at other would-be fighters, and trying to recruit others to join the cause. And what that means is that the other fighters that then do join the cause are likely to match the demographics of fighters who were killed in action. Because, for example, if you take a dead fighter and post his image everywhere and say, for example, like many groups have done, oh, this person is just like you. The only difference between you and them is that they decided to fight for their religion, for the people in Syria and things like this. You could be just like them. And the only thing you need to do is travel to Syria and Iraq and join our group. This tends to make sure that the fighters that are recruited are somewhat similar to the dead fighters. So if you have a sample of 25, 26 dead fighters and 200 fighters that are somewhat like them, it gives a good general profile, I believe. So the statistics from these 27 casualties. The first reported death, as I said before, was in August 2012. The last reported death was in August 2016. At this time, I learned earlier this week that another fighter, I think which would make it the 28th, again from the Pankisi Valley, died in combat in Mosul earlier this week. I didn't have time, unfortunately, to update the statistics to take this into account. The average age of these fighters is 26 years old. 27 if you're rounding up. The youngest of these fighters is only 18 years old. The oldest is 39. In terms of region, we have 22 from Pankisi, 2 from Koimokartli, and 1 each originally from Buria, Achara, and Kalkhati. Ethnically, the sample is comprised of 19 ethnic Kists, 3 Chechens, 3 Azeris, and 2 ethnic Georgians. Of course, the question from anybody that studies these demographics and things like this is, how do you determine between Kists and Chechens who are living in Pankisi Valley area? How I've divided, obviously it's not a concrete because both are Vainach people in the same general family, share a mutual language with some dialect shifts, but in this study I've defined fighters who are Kists as inhabitants of the Pankisi valleys who are the descendants of Vainach people who emigrated from the North Caucasus during the 18th and 19th centuries, whereas Chechens are Vainach people who were born in the North Caucasus proper, many whom live in Pankisi as a result of the 1990-2000 Chechen wars. My process for this is not great, admittedly. I define it by place of birth. For example, the 3 fighters that I've defined as Chechens were born in Chechnya. Some of the 3 fighters who I've defined as Chechens and not Kists had refugee status or IDP status from the 1990s and 2000 conflict. And third is based off surname. Kists tend to generally adopt Georgian-style surnames with Shvili and Ze, whereas Chechens usually remain under the Russian patronymic system. Deaths by year, there was 1 death in 2012, 3 in 2013, 6 in both 2014 and 2015, and then 11 in 2016. So as we can see, the death rate of Georgian foreign fighters is drastically increasing. Show of hands, who recognizes this person? Yeah, this is Omar Al Shishani, also known as Tarkhan Batirashvili. That was the name he was born under. This is the former commander of Jaish al-Muhajirin wal Ansar, and also the former Minister of War of the Islamic State. After multiple reports of his death, he was acknowledged dead by sources within the Islamic State, as well as his family in July 2016. This is a very obscure topic area, so even though we're in Georgia, the fact that many people can recognize who this is, I think, shows kind of the notoriety of this individual particularly. There was a lot of media interest surrounding Omar Al Shishani due to his status, the beard, and also the fact his life story in general. He fought for the Georgian army in the 2008 war and various other facts like this. I think the general problem in the media and analyses of Georgian foreign fighters is we tend to assume that all of them match this profile of this individual particularly. He stands out, of course. But I'm going to go through and profile 3 different other foreign fighters from the sample, and we can see that many of their circumstances, many of their conditions were markedly different from Omar Al Shishani. And the other thing is, Omar was, of course, very notorious in the international press and for international foreign fighters, but in terms of Georgian language sources, other figures I think were more important for recruitment. So we'll look at the three. This is the first one who I've discussed briefly. This is Ruslan Machalikashvili, also known as Saifullah Al Shishani. He was born in 1978 in Pankisi. I don't have the village in which he was born, but I know that he lived for some period of time in Tbilisi. An ethnic Kist. It was remarkable that in many media sources they said he had military experience before he went to Syria. This is not entirely correct. Many more sources actually say that he was part of a criminal formation, had trouble with the law in Russia, was crossing the border doing smuggling, banditry, things like this, which is interesting because this is a profile that we also see of Islamic State fighters in other regions, in Western Europe especially. But overall, he had no kind of military experience prior to Syria. He wasn't in the Georgian military like Omar Shishani. He didn't fight in the North Caucasus jihad like some of his contemporaries. When he started running into legal problems in the North Caucasus, he moved with his family to Turkey for some period of time in the mid-2000s, and then eventually met a group of individuals that he ended up traveling to Syria with around 2012. This kind of change was sudden because from the criminal background, he became one of the most, I think, religiously conservative figures amongst militants from the Caucasus in Syria. He was the commander of Jaish al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar, like I said before, and even throughout the disputes with Omar Shishani and being kicked out of his group, he remained absolutely steadfast to Al-Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra, and didn't ever think about joining the Islamic State, which, based off the position he was in, is quite remarkable. All the pressure was in his court there. He was killed in February 2014 at the age of 36 during a fight for the Aleppo Central Prison. This actually made him very, very famous within Russian-speaking pro-Al-Qaeda social media pages. His combat, I wouldn't describe it as heroic based off the general trends, but he put up an incredible fight, I think, and the video of his death was widely published, even in some protest movements and things like that back in Turkey and the North Caucasus and things like that. People were carrying around images of Saifullah Shishani. It should be interesting that several of his family members, including his son, this is an old picture, but his son has now kind of grown up to the age that it would be acceptable for him to be a jihadist fighter, which is still very young. He's probably 16 or 17 at this point in time. Maybe younger than that. I'm not exactly sure because I haven't been able to track it down exactly, but it's rumored that he's fighting for the Islamic State, unlike his father. And then there's also rumors that he has a cousin who's also participating in the conflict. So these are all three pictures of Saifullah Shishani. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see him while he was still in Jaish al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar, and Omar Shishani is 2 positions to his left. This is the second fighter. His name is Beslan Mukhtarov or Mukhtarovi. He was born in Karajala, which is a small village of Azeri people outside of Tel Aviv. He was an ethnic Azeri, citizen of Georgia, born in Georgia, who had closest to the highest marks for the medical exam that you could have in Turkey, near 100%. So he went to Istanbul University to study to become a doctor. But in a very kind of strange incident around 2010, 2011, a fellow student at his university accused him of being pro-Israel. This was after the flotilla incident. They accused him of making a pro-Israel statement, and the Turkish security services started investigating him for being pro-Israel and being a Gulenist, which nobody can either confirm or deny, but essentially he was expelled from Turkey, had to return from Georgia, and for the next 4 years after 2011, he fought constantly to get status in Turkey. It was a highly publicized case, I think, to some extent in Turkey, but he was unsuccessful, and the last that they heard of him, his father heard that he was fighting for Jabhat al-Nusra in Syria in 2015, which is where he was killed after an airstrike in Latakia province at the age of 28 in December 2015. And it's interesting that he was actually working as a doctor for Jabhat al-Nusra as a combat medic, so he's able to carry over some of his capabilities. The third fighter is Khvicha Gobadze, also known as Abu Mariam Georgi. He was born in the village of Didachara, which is in the Hula district of Achara. But as much of mountainous Achara during the early 1990s, his family was moved, I think, to Salka district first, and then later, I think he moved to Batumi so that he could study in madrasa. He's an ethnic Georgian Muslim. After a short period of time studying in Batumi, he took lessons in a madrasa in Egypt. There are photos on Facebook of his time in Egypt. Eventually, he moved to Turkey and then left for Syria during fall of 2015. Even more so than Omar Shishani, I think Abu Mariam Georgi might be the first or second most prolific Georgian language recruiter of Islamic State throughout this entire time period. The fact that he actually had some educational background in Islam made him kind of a quasi-authority figure for most of the figures, and he was the main speaker in the Islamic State first media release in the Georgian language, Zamili Kartal Hawks, a message to the Georgian people, where he stood alongside three other ethnic Georgian Muslim fighters from Goria. He was killed fighting during a battle in the Deir ez-Zor government in Syria on January 2016 at the age of 22. But even after his death, he manages to appear very frequently in Georgian language Islamic State recruiting messages. The bottom picture is actually a screenshot of one of the pages that was used to disseminate Islamic State material in Georgia and in the Georgian language. And this was the second video screenshot that was released in the Georgian language. My Georgian is still not great, but this is the title is a verse from the Quran. I think Surah Al-Taha. My God, I hasten myself towards you so that you will be satisfied with me. It features these three individuals, and it's kind of eulogy format. Khvicha Gobadze is in the middle. The two others are Anas and Abdul Wahab, two fighters from the Pankisi area, and it features various Georgian Islamic State militants talking about the dead and how brave they were and how they were instrumental in getting the Georgians to join the Islamic State and fight in jihad or things like this. And also the above two pictures are of Gobadze, and this is the one on the top right is kind of disturbing. The Islamic State fighters love posing with Syrian kids. So I'll highlight kind of four overall trends that I've been able to figure out from the sample of 27 fighters. The first one has to do with death rates. Again, it runs into the same methodological issues with counting foreign fighters in general, but the International Center for the Study of Radicalization assessed that, in general, more than 10 to 15% of individuals who have participated in the Syrian conflict since 2012 have died. This doesn't factor in, it's very common for people to go back and forth between Syria and Turkey, and Syria and their home countries as well, so it doesn't count people who have left the battlefield permanently. But this is the overall casualty rate. But it does vary by region, and this is interesting because you can tell how certain regions, certain groups of foreign fighters are valued by an organization based off their death rate. For example, if a group is valued as fighters, their death rate will be lower. One, because they're more effective fighters, but then also because they're not put into situations where they face high-risk situations. Right? So, in general, a study by the International Center for Counterterrorism pointed out that Arabs and people from foreign fighters from the North Caucasus tended to have lower death rates because many more of them were represented in leadership